All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we thank you for staying with us up till this moment. Now, before we start our conversation on healing post-elections trauma, here is Ekene Ndulue's report to, of course, prompt us for the conversation.
2023 elections have come and gone, and winners declared for the various elective positions. As expected, not everyone is satisfied with the election results, and many have expressed their displeasures at the election petition court, both at the state and national levels. While the contenders are still waiting for the court to determine the cases before it, elected officials at the executive arm of government have been inaugurated, as government cannot exist in a vacuum. Many whose preferred candidates did not win the election have, however, not come to terms with this reality and are obsessively engaged to prove their beliefs that the other side is wrong. This feeling, referred to as post-election stress trauma by psychologists, is known to cause fears about the future, uncontrollable anger, and negative thoughts that loop endlessly. Political pundits believe this feeling is not healthy for progressive government, as government needs the support of its citizens to successfully fulfill its mandate. This is not lost on the new administration, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is already extending the olive branch. In his inaugural speech, the president said, in quote, "Whether from the winding creeks of the Niger Delta, the vastness of the northern savannah, the boardrooms of Lagos, the bustling capital of Abuja, or the busy markets of Onitsha, you are all my people. As your president, I shall serve with prejudice towards none, but compassion and amity towards all." On this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, guests shall be speaking on healing post-election trauma.
All right, thank you very much, Ekene Ndulue, for that backgrounder. We have guests, of course, here with us in the studios and elsewhere from the country who will be joining us for today's conversation. Let's welcome Ali M. Ali, veteran journalist, and he was also Deputy Director of Media and Publicity at the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Ali, we're glad to have you this morning.
Well, good morning, viewers, and it's good to be here. I think it's in order. I learned Good Morning Nigeria today is the 9th anniversary, so I say kudos to you. You guys have engaged Nigerians every morning in the last 9 years, so I think thanks largely to some of you who pioneered this program. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much, Ali M. Ali. We're going to leave that for the last, but since you've disclosed that, pretty good. We also have with us here a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, PR and media consultant, Chief Great Imo, Jonathan.
You know, I've warned you before that calling me chief is very costly for me because now my village people will be demanding all manner of things. So good to be here with you.
Okay, and joining us from our Ibadan Network Center is Mrs. Dalapo Patricia Dosumu, former State Director, National Orientation Agency, or your state. She's an icon of peace, World Institute of Peace and National Coordinator on Election Matters at the World Institute of Peace. It is a pleasure, Madam, to have you this morning.
Good morning. God bless you. It's good to be here again. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right, and via Zoom from Kaduna is Professor Kabir Matu, a political scientist, former commissioner of the Kaduna State. Prof, you're welcome to the program. All right, I just hope that he heard me.
I think it's our engineers will advise.
Clear the line, yes, so that we can.
Not just to line. Perhaps it's muted himself for the Zoom. I believe so.
Exactly.
If our engineers get across to him, quickly enough. I'm sure he'll be able to do that. Well, madam and gentlemen, let's take a look at this. We cannot pretend about our country. Today is the 2nd of June. We had the inauguration of the new federal administration on Monday, which was the 29th of May. In February, on the 25th of February, to be precise, we had the presidential election. And many, of course, know, not just in terms of the outcome, the process that led to the election, what happened in the course of the election, and thereafter, of course, also with the National Assembly on the same day, and then the governorship elections on the 18th of March. Our fault lines were again exaggerated, reopened old wounds, and it wasn't altogether a very pleasant experience. In terms of litigating the outcome, that's ongoing. But Nigeria would appear to have been traumatized by the 2023 general elections. Let me begin with the former director of NOAA in Oyo State, Mrs. Dolakbo Dosumo. Mrs. Dolakbo Dosumo, well, time, they say, it takes care of most things. Are we now in the mood to begin to look at, as it were, to say, well, all that happened 3 months ago, let's move on with our lives? We cannot be in a perpetual state of worrying or at the same time of being in conflict. What do you think is the national mood now, and how can that be affected?
Well, thank you so much. You know, it is expected that when a nation has just gone through the process of election campaigns, election procedures, and eventually a winner will emerge. So now we have a winner in Nigeria, which is the President Tinubu. I think for now, the attention of our people has shifted to living to be hopeful that what could this government offer us? And good enough, the people that were aggrieved with the procedure of the election are in the courts of law. So that one is there. But for the generality of the people, I think when you have an election that produced a fairly acceptable leader, you know, there's not going to be much, you know, bitterness, opposition, or grievances, because as you could see now, people are already engaged in what is this government bringing to us? What are we gaining from this new government? What people are trying to understand, can this government see to our well-being, improve on our well-being? So the expectation is that, how can I, you know, my lot be better in this new government? Unfortunately, Mr. President has been trying to, you know, send out olive hands, hands of fellowship to people that he thinks need to be brought into the government. And he has made it clear that his government is for everybody in Nigeria. So I think our people are very hopeful. Everybody is looking at, how would my well-being be improved? How would my economy be improved? And unfortunately, you know, I will expect that when an economic policy that will directly affect the people will be introduced at the early stage of a government, there has to be a communication between the government and the people. Because if you're passing a law, or if you are deciding on a policy that you think will affect the well-being of our people, it is natural for you to talk with them. Sit down. This is what we want to do. This is how it affects you. And this is what the government is expecting to gain from this. So when this happens, there won't be this misconception, lack of education, or grievances that we're witnessing concerning the withdrawal of the petroleum subsidy. So we're still hopeful that, well, if people get to know why government is taking that decision, it will be accepted, and it will be for our better in the nearest future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks indeed, Mrs. Dosumu. Let's return to the studio now and ask Great Imo Jonathan to also let us know his reading of the situation. Of course, my colleague highlighted the fault lines, you know, which were exacerbated at some point. They were touching all aspects of our existence, religion, ethnicity, you know, agitation and what have you, all were brought to, into focus, you know, during that period. Now that we have arrived at a point where we have a sitting president and he has to deal with the healing and reconciliation and what have you, that's what we're talking about now. Now, what's your reading about the situation and the mood of the people, especially the people that you represent?
Well, let me start by saying our sister over there started by her opening speech by saying it is expected that after election. Why? It's because we have gone through this cycle over and over and over, and Nigeria is getting used to it. We expect that during elections, it will be like war. We will fight, we will kill each other, abuse each other, and when we are done, whoever gets the trophy will say, oh, it is expected. We keep going around the circle, and the nation keeps deteriorating. The psyche of the nation keep getting harmed. You know, before we came into the studio, we were having a discussion. I was telling our brother here that many people don't even know, for example, that the biggest Islamic school in Nigeria is in the southeast. But during the election, somebody will want you to believe that everybody in the southeast are all Christians and they're against Muslims. And some people will believe that everybody in the north are Muslims, they're against Christians. Then you go to the market, you go to Lagos Island, Mandela, you see Abdullahi with Kolade, with Emeka, they are all hustling together. They are finding, you know, their daily bread together, you know, mitigating the effects of our economy together. They don't have problems. Then you go to the church today in the city of Abuja, you see northerners, you see Christians, their pastor is a northerner or a Yoruba or Igbo, and they all sit there. You go to the mosque, you see them. Then in my estate, we even have a kind of a social club where we have a northerner leading it, we have Yoruba, we have Igbo, we have Niger Delta. We are friends at that level. But once it comes to the election, why do we become enemies? The question is, we weaponize our diversity and turn it into negative views. So I would say that the problem of Nigeria has always been the political class. And I'll say this, a nation cannot heal except it begins to what? Believe in truth. And like one of our former leaders from Northern Nigeria say, truth is an open wound. Only conscience can heal. When we say, oh, let's get over it without telling ourselves the truth, we aren't going to heal. We are not going to move forward. The next 4 years, we'll expect that we'll go through this same cycle again. And then when we come out, then those who have either won or who have gotten the trophies, oh, let's move on. When we will stop going through this cycle? And to make it easier for us, I would say that maybe truth may be subjective. When you ask me what is truth, I may have a different opinion. But the only thing that is underlying that can be discovered as truth is the ground norm, which is the Constitution. When the rule of law is followed, beyond our sentiments, beyond our interests, we will arrive at something. Because that is why the late sage, late Bafemi Awolowo said that a nation governed by law is better than a nation governed by people, governed by men. If we have to have a peaceful, progressive Nigeria, let's learn to follow the law. And I don't think there are laws against ballot snatching, against whatever thing you might think of that has to do with election. Did we follow it? And when we have gone through this process, the outcome, when we go to adjudicate it, did we actually follow the rule of law to arrive at who was wrong, who was right? We can't be saying it's expected. Let's learn to make progress by following our own rules of engagement so that, because if we don't, I've heard people say in the next 4 years, people will begin to train guns, buy guns, because the next time, nobody's going to wait for INEC to announce results. And you have to believe that when you have gone through this process, for you to heal, the only way to heal is to tell the truth. Let's tell the truth, because where there is no repentance, there is no forgiveness. And you can't be telling me let's forgive when you have not repented. Thank you.
Please take that last line again.
I
Where
said,
there is no
Repentance, no forgiveness.
There cannot be no forgiveness.
there can be no forgiveness.
Yes. You can't be asking for me to forgive when you have not repented of your sins.
Of your transgressions.
Of your transgression. Yeah, that can
All right, great, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Let's bring in Ali M. Ali. Ali, well, against the backdrop of the comments by the other two guests, let's have your initial intervention. That namely, look, Nigeria was traumatized by 2023. And on the eve of the inauguration of the new president, the inaugural lecture took place. And amongst the persons who spoke before the main speaker, that's the former president of Kenya, was Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. And one line to take away from what he said is that all is not well with Nigeria, and that we should not and cannot pretend about it. What's your take?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the issue of the inaugural lecture. But just to also make a recap of what the previous speakers have said about the transition and the post-election trauma, I think in any election cycle, not just in Africa or just in Nigeria, it's a process. In the process of capturing political power, politicians, whether in Africa or in Australia, deploy whatever sentiment to arrest or to capture political power at whatever level. So it's expected. In more developed climes, what we think is a more defined, for example, in the United States, there's always that segmentation along race, along class, along social status. Now back home, we use the fourth line, the usual suspect, religion, ethnicity, because we want to capture political power. Once we capture it, what do we do differently? I think that is the thing that matters. Now, going back to what Father Hassan Kuka said in the, I think, post the lecture delivered by Uhuru Kenyatta, who incidentally dwell on some of the things that actually, and draw a striking similarity between what happened in Kenya and elsewhere in Africa, and especially Nigeria. You would think that he's actually talking about Nigeria. What he said, look, each time the election cycle, the first 2 years are devoted to healing. And by the third year, you start the vicious cycle all over again. So how do we break away from that? And then the theme Matthew Hassan Kuka has always dwell on, that all is not well with Nigeria. And we have some divisive figure over time, since the dawn of Nigeria's independence. And this, we've taken certain steps to build a new Nigeria. For example, the post-civil war. What we did, the government at the time, was to try to reintegrate Nigerians. The policies pursued at that time, if you remember the 3 R's, reconciliation, rehabilitation, and what the other R for? Reconciliation, rehabilitation, and I think reconstruction. And then federal colleges were established. Some of us are product of integration. A new Nigeria was birthed at the time. NYC scheme, people who, like some of us now, we went to unity colleges. Now, still, what happened? And this is where I think the issues raised by Matthew Hassan Kuka, that something is definitely wrong with the Nigerian. There's something just not right. Because in the past, and it's possible, we were talking a while ago, off camera, behind the scene, in the waiting room, how Nigeria was integrated, how it was possible. You might have been born in the north, but then you school in the south or somewhere else, and you get married to somebody from another part of the country, and you have a complete new Nigeria. But what happened to young ones now? Some of them are now more or less being fed daily syrup of hate. And these are the people expected to take over with time, because the old generation, the pre-independent generation, they are fast receding. So yes, something is wrong. We acknowledge. The first thing you do is, like you said, and I like that conclusion, if there is no repentance, there won't be forgiveness. But till this moment, there are people who are playing ostrich, thinking that actually their transgressions would remain either unnoticed or anonymous. And these are, at the end of the day, who will pay dearly for it. So it's important that beyond acknowledging that all is not well, what concrete steps have we taken to address this clear and present danger, because anywhere, the elite, we all know this, the elites actually point their views, their action or inaction actually impact on the ordinary citizen. But it's only in Nigeria you see a seeming disconnect, amazingly, like the image, I mean the scenario he sketched. If you go down the social ladder, you find all Nigerians working together in marketplaces, in places of worship. And then one interesting thing, like people always make this reference, sports unite Nigerians. When you talk of sports now, football, in football, all Nigerians come together and then we become faceless, we become the face of Nigeria. But when it comes to navigating the political arena and capturing political power, the Nigerian elite is not different from any elite across the world. But the difference with the Nigerian elite is hook or crook. You get it? And then the healing, that's where it matters most. Both the winner and the losers really sit around and say, okay, now we've done this. Look, let's think of forging ahead and making a nation. In the United States, let me just slightly make this last one point. In 1996, when Clinton surprisingly staged a major upset, just the way like JFK did in the early 60s, when he became president of the United States. Just a day before the election, there was a debate, I think a week or so. And then George Bush Sr. was asked about his opinion about Bill Clinton. And he said, look, beware of these baby boomers. And then Ross Perot also said, look, if you were to employ Bill Clinton in his vast oil, he won't go beyond a middle management level. The following day, after Bill Clinton was declared winner, the same George Bush was asked, he said, look, what opinion? He said, look, yesterday we were talking about the presidential candidate of a party. Today we are talking about the president-elect of the United States. The people have spoken. That's my concluding line.
Thank you, indeed. I hope that will begin to happen here in this part of the world, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. Professor Kabir Malto, you're a political scientist. I'm almost sure that what is playing out in Nigeria is not as a surprise. It's not surprising to you, having a good understanding of African politics, which of course you teach in the class. Now, we have gone through electionary period, and this program also hosted you within that period on a number of topics, you know, to build up to the election, and even after the elections, we have engaged you on some topics. So now, what is your reading of the present situation? We're talking about the reconciliation, thinking of how to ensure that Nigerians are carried along. Based on the outcome of the election and of course the protestations and what have you, what is your take on the present situation in the country, given of course also the fact that the president took a major step, you know, to change the course of our economic history by talking about removal of oil subsidy? Put all of that, you know, into context.
Thank you very much, Kira. I think that's what we expect in this country today. I think you know, everyone should expect that you know, everything is not okay, and everything should not be okay in a plural society like ours. So in my view, the statement by Bishop Puka and people who think like that is simply you know, amplifying or rather romanticizing an issue of basic political reality. If everything is okay, then there will have been no need for politics. If everything is okay, there will have been no need for election. If everything is okay, then there will have been no need for you know, leadership itself. So the society is in a process of you know, political convulsion at every point in time, and the role of politics and leadership therefore is to be able to throw up this obvious local and national contradictions for the political class to attempt to provide solutions to them. So it's not unexpected, as one of my panelists there has rightly mentioned. It's always been the case whenever there is electoral contestation, people try to exploit ways and means, you know, without recourse to even, you know, considering the very basic fault lines that we have of the people and as a nation. And these fault lines are often exploited in order to seek political favors and advantage. And that's why the issue of religion, the issue of ethnicity, the issue of region, state, etc., comes about. And let's not pretend about it and make it look as if this is a peculiar Nigerian problem. No, it's in fact, it's a global problem. By the time Barack Obama was elected in the United States of America for the first time and apparently winning a re-election, there was a resurgence of white nationalism, which led, to the throwing up of people like President Trump, against a more urban and humane and, experienced Hillary Clinton, because, a certain specific category within the United States polity thought, that they went to sleep when, a descendant of perhaps, a migrant, not even a descendant of ex-slaves, apparently became the president of America and ruled, that dynamic society for 8 years. So the confusion, the contradictions, and the crisis that we face after this election are similar to those crises that we have faced, after previous elections. And I dare say, just like the former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, did rightly mention, it's not a peculiar African problem, it's a global. Whenever there is political contestation, you expect, that you have a political high blood pressure among the people within that particular, political entity. So it's normal. And I think what we need to do now is what, in my view, President Tinubu has begun to do by, bringing about those who either believed in him, those who either voted for him or did not vote for him, and reassuring everybody that he is a president of Nigeria. And that's what politicians, that's what leaders do. And we always must take into cognizance that there is a very, huge gap between politics, elections, and governance, on the other hand. And I think the time now is governance. And every time we have elections, and I'll agree with all those who opine that this was, the last election was the most, fought confrontational election that came along, not regional lines. Politics in Nigeria, elections in Nigeria have always been along either regional or ethnic lines. But I think the most dangerous dimension of the last election, was the sectarian, throwout that was introduced by not necessarily the political class, or not necessarily by the, contestants, but mainly by Nigerians, the clergy, the imams, etc., etc. And that has always been my view. One of the most dangerous things that anybody can throw out there, whether in the church or in the mosque, is not restricting himself or herself to the issue of calling people in the service of God, but rather, delving into the murky waters of politics, thereby, instigating or confusing people to go one way or the other. And I think that's the most dangerous dimension of the 2023 elections, which President Tinubu must have to, and the rest of us, of course, Nigerians, must have to very seriously look inward, and see how to build these bridges and try, to correct the stresses, that have arisen as a result of that. But I am saying that there is nothing particularly too extraordinary about what has happened. The way we feel as the people and the nation now is merely a reflection of how we have always felt since, during colonial periods when elections were conducted. And I'm also saying that it's not particular or it's not peculiar, to either Nigeria or Africa, but it's a global phenomenon that, in every electoral contest, there will always have to emerge a winner and a loser. But then, of course, the major problem here has to do with the fact that in our own case, and of course, the Western liberal democracy that we are practicing in Nigeria today provides for the first past the poll. What it means, therefore, is that if you put together the number of Nigerians that came out to vote and voted for either Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, and other, candidates, if you put their numbers together, there will be much more than the numbers that actually voted for the president who's sitting in, the presidential villa today. So it means, therefore, that, the tyranny of the majority is at play. Tyranny of the majority in the sense that one candidate was able to secure more votes than the individual candidates that contested. But if you put the political support of the other candidates together, you'll find that there are more people that voted against the government that is in power today than So this is normal. This is politics. And I think, therefore, to get out of it will require a lot about the political brickmanship on the part of those who are magnanimous at the point of, electoral victory, for them to be able to talk to Nigerians, bring everybody together with a view to. And that does not mean that by the time we get to 2027, you're not going to see things like this. But let's pray that we play the politics in 2027, not on the basis of religion. It's more acceptable, if there's anything to say, to do politics of tribe, ethnicity, regionalism, which are the major characters that define the political and electoral flow in this country from colonial periods to this time. So I think it's time for us to settle down.
Professor Kabir Bato, we are going to have to pause you here. Thank you very much for your incisive intervention. Before we look ahead to 2027, we still have to deal with the consequences of 2023, which is why, of course, we're having this interaction. Two things that I want to again invite our attention to. Earlier, great, you were talking about the weaponization of our diversity and the exploitation of it, and the points that have been made by all, that this is a global phenomenon. But again, we have our own peculiar situations that we bear the consequences, the effects of what is happening around us. Americans are not bearing the consequences. Now, part of what has emerged, and typically again of us, as a suggestion for the healing process, is to say, look, who are the targets of the healing that should take place? Because ordinary folks whose heads were broken, whose property were damaged, or who lost their loved ones, were also the victims of the consequences of the weaponization of our diversity. But you keep hearing, okay, I have government of national unity, is the appeasement for the political class that manipulates diversity, or the appeasement should be for the citizens at large? Great.
Well, I love this because each time we look at reconciling Nigeria, we look at the political bigwigs reconciling their own interests. To reconcile Nigeria, Nigeria needs to first reconcile itself by saying, what are the rules by which we must play? What are the consequences for the actions of people? What are the palliatives we must give when we want to reconcile, when we want to ameliorate the sufferings, the anger, the pains, especially at that lower cadre of our society? Because the unfortunate thing is that whatever we want to achieve in a society, it is actually the elite that will lead the way. It is the political elite that have failed in Nigeria, and the standard by which they've set for themselves have been so reduced that today, when you talk about Nigeria, they look at Nigeria from their personal interests rather than what is the interest of the generality of the people. And again, I don't think the vision of what Nigeria should be has been properly defined. Otherwise, we'll know when the elite and the ordinary person is going below par. Today, we want to ask ourselves, nations are defined by philosophies, by values, by vision. That is why we don't even know, when we say, oh, it happens every political election, we can't even determine whether we are making progress, because the standard by which we have set for ourselves is that, oh, this is a regular occurrence. We don't have mileage. There are no signposts. There are no, landmarks for which we measure our progress politically and all that. So when you said you want to reconcile Nigeria, Nigeria first has to reconcile itself. Reconcile itself means we have to reconcile the rules by which we play. We have to reconcile the standard of action for which everybody, the consequence for which everybody who falls by that rule must face. Then we also need to come to the fact that I want to even appreciate the fact that amongst those who contested the election, we can see that they have good temperament, especially at the presidential level. We can see they are good temperament. The language so far has been very measurable. At least they are in courts. We must appreciate them for that. But using words to placate them is not enough. Sometimes some of these people symbolize other interests, other visions, motivations for going into the election at the lower level. Maybe the way you treat this symbol may matter to them. But beyond that, there are other things that needs to be reconciled, how we play, the consequences for the action, so that next time somebody who is being recruited to go and kill, to maim, knows there is consequence for action. If we don't do it now, it will repeat, the cycle will repeat, and it may get dangerous and get worse. So that is, for me, how I think we should proceed on this matter.
Yeah, brilliant. I like your perspective to that. Let's bring in again Mrs. Dosumu. You began this conversation by saying that there are expectations, and I want you to also dwell a little bit on that. Let us understand the expectations that the people are hoping to get. And other speakers, especially Greg, talked about the weaponization of diversity, which my colleague also highlighted. That's very important because during the elections, we know what happened. In some places, somebody will say, if you're not voting for this social party, don't even near the polling unit and all of that. So if Prof, for instance, Professor Kabiru Mamatu was talking about the fact that the political scenarios that we are witnessing today is also experienced in other climes. That is understandable. But again, we have our own peculiarities. Some of the things that cannot take place in all those climes are taking place here in the name of politics. Now, talking about reconciliation, where are you going to ask this administration to begin from if you're in the position to do that with respect to the weaponization that we talked about? And again, what the great said, no repentance, no forgiveness. What is the connection now, if you know, your understanding based on what took place before, during, and after election, and the stage we are now, which is a reconciliation of not just the elites, but the entire Nigerians who we are more or less traumatized because of what took place?
Thank you so much. Well, for me, I want to see the process of election as a competition. And we have come to see or to realize that in Nigeria, politicians look they will look closely at the weakness of people and capitalize on it to, you know, to sell their candidates. And it's unfortunate that, yes, our election procedure has been, you know, patterned towards religion, ethnicity, tribes, and stuff like that. But I want to say that it is not the position of any or of all public analysts or commentator should not be wholly accepted as the gospel truth. I'm saying this because I know that there are some states that after the elections, the state governors will come up to say, yes, when we're doing our campaigns, we shouted at each other, we were using devices just to, you know, curry people's favor and trust, you know. And after and now that election is over, please let's come together on the table and see how we can develop our state. And like I said before, I have been seeing the traces of that in the present new president of Nigeria. So reconciliation, do you notice that the people, let me start from the presidential candidates. Sometimes they meet themselves at close range, maybe at the airport or a function. They relate so closely well. And they are all, some of them have always been saying that, see, our followers, we are not giving you, you know, a directive to go on and attack ourselves, attack our, you know, families, that look at how we are behaving and please follow suit. But our people, in the interest of, you know, I want to be seen to be totally loyal to this leader, they go, you know, all the way, they attack themselves, and honestly, it is not all the time that their so-called leaders give them that assignment or direction that go and destroy this, go and destroy this. So the reconciliation, for me, it will start from the home. Because you will imagine that in the particular family, the two leaders, the mother and the father, could belong to different political parties. So as soon as the election is over, what is there to fight over again? And like I said, now there's a government in place. The people that are aggrieved, they are in court. And if we start to emphasize on the premise that, oh, some people are aggrieved, some people are not happy, then there won't be development. I think we should just let it go. The thing we should hammer on is that the people that are in charge of putting up or installing a government should do the right thing. Follow the procedure that you have laid down. Let the people have confidence in you. Let them trust your process. If there is trust in the umpire, there won't be so much bitterness. Of course, it is certain when there's election, there'll be a winner, there'll be a loser, and it is natural. The loser will complain all over the world. Anybody that loses will see how they can, put up an agitation that, oh, it's not fair, this is not right, this is not right. But we all know that at the end of the day, there will be a winner. And it is now left for the winner to extend hand of fellowship to the leaders, the followers. And I think Mr. President is now saying that, see, my government is for everybody. I think that's good enough. My government will take care of interests of everybody. Now we are in government. We are not in, we are not in election campaigns has gone. So we are in the process of forming a government that will be of benefit to all Nigerians across purposes, across ethnics, across languages, religion. And if the truth needs to be told, I think we should give, the new government, we should expect that what he said, he will do it. So that's why I put up the issue of trust. Let's trust him. Let's hope that, okay, whether the election was 100% okay or not, now a government is in place. How do we benefit from it? How does his government affect my well-being? Like I said, so that is what is needed. And once the government starts and everything is being taken care of, I think that's a healing on its own. If you expect that your candidate will bring will improve your well-being, will improve your economy, will improve your family condition, and now there's a government in place that is doing exactly so. So the life will continue. So we can't sit and be brooding over, this was not right, this was not. Of course, the body in charge of election would have learned their lessons. Naturally, when there's a process, there are lessons to be learned. There are, strengths, there are failures, and I expect that after the elections, they will have sat down and see where they have faltered and where they have done well. So the same thing with government. Government has determined to take care of everybody. So let's give them a chance. The hope is that, this will be a better government. I think that is what we need to hold on to.
Okay, Mrs. Dosunmu, thank you very much there for your comments from my Ibadan Network Center. Let's come back to the studios. Ali Emale, I still want to throw the same question with regard to the target of healing. We know that our politics is a zero-sum game. Those who engage in elections and seek elective office, they know that they invest their all, so when they lose, they are also total losers. But at the end of the day, it is the common folk who also are the victims, the direct victims of the shenanigans, of the weapons that a political class normally would deploy. Therefore, in your opinion, how can we have a whole of society approach in this healing that is inevitable if we are to make progress?
Well, that's an open-ended kind of thing. I think it's a whole process that involves everyone, and especially forces that in every election cycle, they play a prominent role. I think one of the Professor Kabir Mato did say something about the role of the clergy, the pulpit. And this is very important. The pulpit, because we're people of faith. And this is where I think in healing, And in trying to rebuild a society that has been so traumatized by one of the most divisive electioneering campaign like the 2023 election. So the whole society, depending on which segment of the society. Now, if you look at the young people, and they played a key role here, young Nigerians between the ages of, well, ages of election, 18 and above, up to 45. I would say, I dare say, because most didn't do any better within this age range. So if we are trying to build a new society, of course, election by their very nature, which all the panelists have acknowledged, are divisive, the process. Because, see, sometimes when people look in the direction of politicians for solution, they forget, like I think one politician in the United States said, that actually they are the cause of the problem. So we have to look outside politicians. And this is where civil society, unfortunately, a section of the civil society, just like a section of the media, also is intensely partisan. So what do we do to get out of this quagmire in building a new society? When people say statesmen, people who impact the most are outside the purview of politics. And this is where I think the pulpit here, because we're people of faith, and time to sheath the sword of partisanship. Now, all religions, because we are people of faith, even the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria said, look, the Constitution of Nigeria is a people, we're guided by a people of faith. And this is why, like I said, we have to go outside politicians themselves, the civil society. And it's important that people rise above being partisan, you get to a stage from being partisan to being a statesman. Like this immortal words I'm trying to call, who said that politicians think of the next election, but statesmen think of the next generation. And they are statesmen. And people who exert the most influence sometimes are outside politics, like this issue about the pulpit. But unfortunately, the pulpit, the media, all of them reflect the very debilitating ill that is peculiarly Nigerian. So, way forward, I always go back to this template by the government of General Yakubu Gowon, post-Civil War. And that, you may say it was a military regime, but you see, under his leadership at the time, after the end of the Civil War, steps taken first to make all Nigerians, because unless you make all Nigerians feel that they belong, all of them, reintegrate them, integrate them. And of course, attitude here also is crucial. Your attitude, they say, determines your altitude. If you have a very negative attitude, no matter what, you cannot be integrated. Most things, they begin with the mind. So now this is where, again, the government, outside even politicians, but once politicians access state power, they must drop the toga of partisanship. They must speak and act like statesmen. They must, of necessity, blunt the edges of division along the usual fault lines, which we have identified in the course of this program. So, with that moving forward, because most Nigerians, we are easy to please. When Mandela assumed the leadership of South Africa, the first thing he did when the majority black wanted a reprisal or a revenge, he said, look, I have opposed white minority rule. I'm not about to impose a black majority tyranny. So it's important that leaders become statesmen. Politicians assume the toga. Once the followership, the leadership assumes that toga of statesmanship, then of necessity, we follow. Right. Followers, we follow.
All right. I think what we have, Kisley, is an elder statesman. I'm not sure we have the kind of political statesman that he's talking about.
They're younger statesmen.
Until we get there, when men will understand that when you're in power, you should be a statesman and think of the future generation and build them from that point. of you. Now, you see, negativity, they say, begets negativity. I know we're going to take a short break before I lose this line of thought. Let's bring in Great here. That's a very short answer I would like to take from you. You know, in Nigeria, there's this thing they call gypsy positions. You know, we're talking about reconciliation now that we have government. According to Mrs. Dosumu, the government is in power. We need to give the government a chance to see how we can benefit from the government and its policies. That's very apt. And now, in terms of positions, is it possible for the present government to use position of authority to bring about some form of reconciliation, even if it's among the elites? To see trickle down. If you are given a position, for instance, I'm sure that your family and the extended family and, of course, friends and other well-wishers could benefit from that. So could you use that as a way of ensuring some balancing and cushioning some, temper, that's been rising since after this election?
Well, in the times past, we have seen such happen. But I think where the challenge lies is actually the struggle for power in Nigeria. Is actually the struggle for the resources of Nigeria. Hence, when people are looking for power, most times, it's not to literally make a change. You can check it. Let's be truthful. You see that politicians are the most hypocritical people in Nigeria. They say things they don't mean because they want to get things they want for themselves and their cronies. Sometimes it may be difficult for them to let go. The real motivation for which they killed, maimed, destroyed the psyche and the society, which is the resources of Nigeria. And you talked about statesmen. For example, we used to refer to elder statesmen. We really literally don't talk about statesmen because it's not about age. We've not had people, there was a movie or a book I read about 65 men who made America. If you read their story, at the end, at the byline, they signed with their blood. They mixed with their blood and they signed. They said, "On my honor." People who have envisioned what they want their society to be, most of them were wealthy men who said, "We wanted America to be this," and they were ready to sacrifice for it. So the problem is that in a country where you have politicians who are ready to sacrifice, maybe using those positions to placate, maybe of necessity. The question also will be, the man who actually wants to be placated with juicy position, if that is all there is in it for it, that means he's not actually the best for the country, because that's actually what the challenge has been.
Okay, well, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're going to a point where we take a short break, and when we come back, the conversation definitely continues. Don't go away.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress. Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
Your skill is key to your professional growth in the competitive broadcast media industry. Take advantage of the following programs specially packaged by NTA Television College Jos to upgrade your skill. Marketing in the era of digital broadcast. Date 13th June to 23rd June 2023, 2 weeks. Drama Production Workshop. Date 3rd July to 21st July 2023, 3 weeks. Intermediate Online News Reporting Skills. Date 24th July to 11th August 2023, 3 weeks. The course fee for the 2-week course is 120,000 Naira, while the fee for the 3-week course is 150,000 Naira only. Accommodation inclusive. All courses will hold at NTA Television College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For further inquiries, please call 0803-079-5335 or 0806-980-9807. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be. Registrar Announcer.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, Let's build our nation together.
Yeah, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I want to go back to Professor Kabir Mato. Professor Kabir Mato, there's an aspect of the healing that I would like you to equally address. And part of it, of course, will flow from what Ali M. Ali said in paraphrasing a statement by a sage that politicians think of the next elections, but statesmen think of the next generation. In some quarters, there is the view that 2023 let down the Nigerian youth. And the Nigerian youth, of course, are the next generation. We saw the surge to register, we saw the surge to collect their PVCs, and suddenly we also saw what happened in the course of the elections. We're not hearing noises from the youth, but if they have also been hurt internally, how do we heal them and be sure that what happened in NSAS, what happened in 2023, is not necessarily in our character, but that these are things that, how do we get them to have that belief and faith in us? Because whatever we need to do, we would need them. Of course, some of the youth were also perpetrators of some of the ill effects of the elections we're talking about. But in general, as I indicated, in some quarters, there is a view that 2023 let down the Nigerian youth.
Well, I don't know to, Kingsley, to what extent you are saying that, people believe that 2023 actually elections let down the Nigerian youth. I think, given the numerical strength, the importance of that specific category of Nigerians, it's very important that I think as parents and as teachers that we go back to the drawing board. The drawing board in the sense that one of the major things actually that is afflicting this country today is our inability to properly bring up, our young people in a manner that they will have an appreciable understanding of, the context, the content and character of the entire Nigerian nation. Our educational system is so weak to the extent that young Nigerians don't seem to know anything about any other part of the country or any other part of culture outside of their own culture. And in my view, this is most destructive than any other thing else that we see. As a secondary school student, I had a fair understanding, of the dynamics of the Nigerian society because we were taught history. Right at secondary school level up to senior secondary school level. Our educational system today does not contain that. Young people don't know history, they don't know who they are, they only know themselves and their immediate environment, they don't know. And a federal system like ours cannot thrive under a culture of ignorance. And I think that is precisely, what led to the, huge agitation that we saw, not just, in the countdown to 2023 election, but even, the NSAS riot that took place substantially, mostly in the southern part of this country. It's all about the weakness of the societal fabric that fails to imbibe in the young people the knowledge of the configuration of the Nigerian society. If more than 30 million youths were registered voters and they went to vote and everybody went with the belief that whatever direction he or she was voting was the direction that was going to come out victorious, I think that constituted a tremendous and tragic erroneous understanding of the complexities of the Nigerian situation. And I think that's basically why a lot of youth, especially across the social media spectrum, believed that it is only the manner in which the candidates that they voted for that were going to emerge victorious, and failure of that, anything short of that, was not accepted as free, fair, and credible election. And I'm saying, therefore, Kingsley, that this is rooted in the lack and or absence of history. This is, the failure on the part of the Nigerian state to properly groom its young people to have, a decent and honest understanding of, what character Nigeria is made of. And I think this is really very important. Adamu, the immediate past Minister of Education, did promise as soon as he took over in 2015 that they are going to revive history in our schools. I don't think if that has been done. We still don't teach history. And if you want to teach history, you must teach history right at the foundational level, at secondary school level. Some of us that went to school in the 60s and the 70s knew about Mansa Musa, we knew about the Kanem Borno Empire, we knew about the Kingdom of Benin, and so many other things. Go to Nigerian universities today, go to a doctorate degree class in political science, and try to sort out the extent of knowledge of individual Nigerians about the peculiarities of other Nigerians, and you will be dismayed. You'll be amazed at the level of huge ignorance that a lot of us have. So the Nigerian youth must have to be properly groomed. And I do believe that in a nation where up to 75% of the population falls below the age of 35, massive investment in the future must be on how to properly bring up the young people. If we don't do that, they will continue to tread out very dangerous trade. And that is why the huge numbers that we have, within the population today does not seem to be in tandem, or does not seem to have the proper knowledge and understanding of the political configuration, the social configuration of the country, and therefore we are mostly governed, by the dictatorship of the social media, where young people continue to post and believe in whatever they are doing, which in most cases are not in tandem with our objective, historical reality as a people. So I think we must make progress. And for us to make progress, the new government has to take the leadership by ensuring that we restructure our educational system.
Kabir Malto, thank you indeed. We are trying to manage time here. My colleague's question actually had to do with the election, and that the youth got disappointed. We know we have about 12 million new voters in this country that emerged, and we are all conscious of getting their voters card. Nigerians have not been so enthusiastic about voting, especially the youth, because of course we have to also agree that the youths have numerical superiority in Nigeria. There's no doubt about that. And in this election, they came out more than any other age bracket in this election. That's what he's saying. And basically because of what transpired during the election and all the violence here and there, they got disappointed. Perhaps in some areas, some say, look, we know what we voted for and we didn't get it. So that's what he's saying, whether the youths have been disappointed, because perhaps next time around, the many youths may not be so enthusiastic anymore. I've had people say, look, I will never vote again. Young persons who are just below 25 saying, I will never try it again. And you talked about history. Yes, indeed, we all did that. But you can also change the course of history. With developmental realities, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's what we're saying. And let's return to Mrs. Dosunmu. Madam, you talked about the youths earlier on, some of them going out of their way to go and commit some crimes or violence, even without being directed by their principal. Yes, to some extent that is true. But again, these youths also know that if they are caught in the process, that some persons will have to come for them. So some people may doubt whether it is possible for a group of youths to go all out defending a principal that doesn't know that he's being defended somewhere and commit a crime. Because if there are courts and the courts do not come from him, they won't go out and do it again. Right. So in that connection, what do you think this government is going to do with the younger generation of Nigerians who showed great interest in 2023 general elections?
Thank you. Let me first of all say that it is quite interesting, and we must recognize and acknowledge that 2023 general election, we had a greater percentage of youth participation, which has never happened before. Before, you see, the day of election, a lot of them will be busy playing football, playing games at recreation, on the streets. But this time around, they all participated. But what I would say is that the youth themselves, you know, for us to have their, you know, integration into the political process, they don't have to concentrate themselves into one political party and expect that once they are in this political party, we must win. It doesn't happen like that. But they can as well, you know, go into different political parties and make this difference that we're talking about. They can, with their number, the numerical strength is there. They can penetrate all other political parties and make this difference that we're talking about. Let me say something. On the day of election, this youth that we're talking about, you know, there could be some, you know, crises, people, you know, the noises here and there. You see these youths, you know, taking it upon themselves to make sure that people are online, you know, educate them, just take it easy, it will be your turn, and things like that. So if they're able to, you know, penetrate other political parties and make a difference, it does not mean that when you come in, you must win. But the impact of the youth must be felt. It is in that process that the party will now start to look at what do these people really want? What are their expectations? What should we do to curry their favor? What should we do to carry them along? And for this government, I recall that in the you know, the period of campaigns, the winner, President Tinubu, at the time addressed the youth, and he addressed himself as part of the youth, meaning that he was able to, you know, identify himself with them. And I know that in the course of this government, a lot of things would change, because already he has committed himself that he's part of them. He will make sure, there was a time he was saying that he would draw out, that he knows that Nigerian youth are very versatile in social media, in you know, computer engineering and stuff like that, that he is willing to tap on that professionalism or skill and make it to an advantage to Nigeria, that he will use it to develop our country, that all the skills, the you know, professionalism in the area of IT will be harnessed to the development of this country. So I'm sure, I'm looking at, you know, that he will use that as part of his integration of the youth into this government.
All right, Mrs. Dosumu, thank you very much. We're pressed for time now. Mrs. Dosumu, we're pressed for time. I want to quickly come back to the studios and then take the thoughts of our two guests here. Ali Emali, well, I took the question from what you said about statesmen thinking of the next generation. And the youth category, of course, will form that next generation. You did also say in the course of today's interaction that, again, restating what had been said in the past, that your attitude determines your altitude. And there is the view that it isn't just about the outcome of 2023, but the process and the procedure would appear to have also hurt the youth population in this country. We have youth across all political parties. There was no political party, I imagine, for instance, in any of the elections that scored 0, which means somebody voted for that individual. It probably is somewhat a bit ominous for the youth to be quiet after what went on. And happily, the president in his inaugural address did say they would do something. But I'm drawing attention again to what needs to be done, what should be done about our youth, to galvanize them, to ensure that they have a positive attitude after, for some of them, the letdown of 2023, and then gain a higher altitude which will be beneficial to all.
Well, you see, the youth, really, anywhere, young people are agents of change. And because they are, most leaders target, if you are desirous of a new society, young elements. Now, the last election, unfortunately, the outcome may not seem to have perhaps commensurate with the enthusiasm demonstrated by young people. But one crucial point that a lot of people are missing is that given the volume of young, new registered voters and the turnout, because overall, if you look at the total number of voters, you find that less than 40% of Nigerians turnout, there was a low voter turnout. In fact, the 2023 election was, the turnout is lower than the 2019 election, notwithstanding the enthusiasm demonstrated by young people, especially in going to register. Some, for some inexplicable reason, actually do not even take their voters register. And those who turn out to be, well, if compared to the number registered, a miserable number. But all said and done, why are they, like you said, ominously silent? There is this eerie silence, and that should disturb the politicians and those in government. But thankfully, like you said, the president in his inaugural speech said, look, this government, and this is key, this assurance. But then the test of the pudding is in the eating. He said, this government is going to involve women and youth. And this is very, very important. It's something I'm emphasizing for that, look, people are watching. But given the political trajectory of the president, what he's done in the past, it gives years the more than likelihood that young people, women will be involved in the new government. Now, still about the lackluster, if you like, result. Young people, for so many reasons, which we know, most of them material, also did not get the chance to run for elected posts. Notwithstanding the young, not too young to run bill signed by the previous president. So they have a lot of work to do in terms of mobilization. If they galvanize themselves into, one direction like it happened in other parts of the world, in Ukraine, the Orange Revolution, the Arab Spring in Egypt, this example were fueled by young people.
Exactly. You know, yes. We don't want to be taken to that level, really, you know, because...
Arab Spring.
Yes, you know, if you get to the African Spring, then that would be a problem. Thank you.
But just quickly, very quickly, Emma, I'm not reopening that, but when we're looking at voter turnout, I'm sure there will be an opportunity for us to look at the numbers, but we also witnessed in 2023 voter suppression tactics, previously unseen.
Exactly. Now, great Timo, Jonathan, we're rounding off. What's your final thoughts on this? And of course, you can make reference to points raised by other guests.
Exactly. I actually was going to do that because when we're talking about the outcome of the election, unfortunately, our dear Prof was talking about history. I was really taken aback because we were avoiding he's trying to avoid the reality before us. You're telling about young people history when before them and before the global community, INEC chairman came and talked about beavers, that you will use the beavers to transmit results, and that generation that told them that they will use beavers, on that day they didn't see beavers being used to transmit election. You think the youth don't know what they are saying? Then even prior to the election, you talked about encouraging young people. In fact, in the time past, when they complain, you say, join politics, vote your this thing. And then they go to register. Eventually, it was a difficulty registering. A society that makes it difficult for its young people to thrive. That's witchcraft, if I say. That's a witchcraft. You look at the immediate part, this Prime Minister of Finland, he's about 34 years. When young people at their prime are itching to give what they are carrying, you see a group of people suppressing them strategically, you know, using all manner of tactics to do it. And you are telling these young people whose mates are presidents in other countries that they don't know what they are doing. You are telling them history when right before them, this subsidized generation, old men and women who have been eating, who are the leeches of Nigeria's economy, are telling young people who went to school on their own sweat, on the sweat of their parents, who have been subjugated, that they don't know what they are saying. Down that you remove subsidy, you are still going to continue to subsidize these people. You're not going to use the resources to employ these young people to build this nation. Let's check the progress. From 1980 till now, how far have we gone? And these people who were there before 1980 are telling young people who are born after 1980 who can see that right before them, Singapore is making progress. Right before this Nigerian youth, Dubai was made from the same resources, oil. In fact, they are even limited to such oil. We have other mineral resources. We have vast arable land. We have all, and this generation that is telling Nigerian youth that they don't know what they are doing. And the other time we were saying, even when young people go to create violence, it's because it's not their leader. It's a lie. In fact, I don't want to mention them here. Where somebody was saying people of certain ethnicity should not interfere in politics of their state, where they have lived, pay taxes, and be citizens and friends with each other. And somebody is denying that it is not political leaders that are leading Nigeria into this quagmire. And when we said, oh, it was not even politics this time, SARS is disturbing us. They are killing us. They are maiming us. And they say, let's protest to give a voice. The next thing, you kill the lot of them. You shoot a lot of them.
No,
violence that resulted to it.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Let me take back the way. To violence.
But we are concluding the program.
I'm not saying, it's not that I said don't go there.
Okay.
The issue is all of that happened. And so how do we now heal the youth population?
Going forward is that
very quickly.
It's only truth that can heal this nation. Let's not be hypocritical. Whether we're Christians, Muslims, whether in politics or not, whether we are young or old, the only thing, the covenant that leads a nation to progress is its constitution.
Okay. Can we now call it you're done? Thank you indeed. I can see your emotions and stuff, you know, that is good. But we're talking about healing this time around. So at this, yes, and at this point, I'd like to thank you. Great Imo Jonathan, public relations and media consultant. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning. And we also like to appreciate Ali M. Ali, former spokesperson, APC Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you, Ali, for being here. Mrs. Dolapo Patricia Dosumu, former State Director, National Orientation Agency. She has other accolades. We'd like to appreciate you for waking up with us on Good Morning Nigeria from Ibadan. Thank you indeed. And we'd also like to say hello once again to Professor Kabir Matu, political scientist and the regular on this show. Thank you, Kabir Matu, for being with us this morning. All right, let's take some foreign tidbits before we call it a day.
9 people have died in clashes across Senegal after a court sentenced firebrand opposition leader Ousmane Sonko to 2 years in jail. A conviction for corrupting youth may disqualify Sonko, President Macky Sall's fiercest opponent, from contesting next year's presidential election. The case has deeply divided Senegal, sparking sporadic but deadly violence that has battered the country's image of stability. After Thursday's verdict, clashes broke out between police and protesters. Buses were set alight in the capital, Dakar, and disturbances were reported elsewhere. A former civil servant, Sonko, rose to prominence in presidential elections in 2019, coming third after a campaign that took aim at Sall and the country's ruling elite. The 48-year-old did not attend the trial and was absent when Thursday's judgment was handed down. He was presumed to be at his Dakar home, where he had been blocked in by security forces after being detained at the weekend. Meanwhile, U.S. senators voted to suspend the federal debt limit on Thursday, capping weeks of fraught negotiations to eliminate the threat of a disastrous credit default just 4 days ahead of the deadline set by the Treasury. Economists had warned the country could run out of money to pay its bills by Monday, leaving almost no room for delays in enacting the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which extends the government's borrowing authority through 2024, while trimming federal spending. Hammered out between Democratic President Joe Biden and the Republicans, the measure passed the Senate with a comfortable majority of 63 votes to 36, a day after it had sailed through the House of Representatives. Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer added that the nation could breathe a sigh of relief after avoiding a catastrophic economic collapse.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you for being with us. And just a reminder that today is the 9th anniversary of Good Morning Nigeria. This day in 2014, the program began. We thank all our viewers. We thank all our contributors, regular guests, and all those who have kept us going. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. Look after yourselves and enjoy your weekend.
And I am Kirian Umayo. I'll see you again.